Thank you very much for joining us here on the Voice of Jobs podcast and video blog. I don't like calling video and podcast the same thing because we're not, but because we live in an age where podcasts are like videos, we're stuck with the same thing. So welcome either way. You can be found in all podcast directories that matter. You can also find us on YouTube. We're going live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, or X, depending on what you prefer. So thank you very much for joining me. Should you have any questions during the show for me or my great guest, John Tarnoff, who I'm going to introduce in a second, feel free to put it in the chat so I can see it. We're just going to spend a few minutes talking about the three elements of career building framework that John has for boomers, or I should just say older folks, or just 45 and older. Depends what flavor you deserve or want to have, but nevertheless. But I do want to introduce John Tarnoff, who I've known for a long time now, and we've interacted online, and I've been on his show 2 years ago, I believe, with you,
Right.
Carrington.
That's right.
It's been 2 years.
Second act show. Yep.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on my show. Again, John, you can see in his lower third, for those who go on the podcast, he's founder of the Make Career Lab, executive and career coach. He's also has a LinkedIn learning course. You have several LinkedIn learning courses, isn't that right, John?
4 of them.
You have 4 of them. And he's also an author of the book, Boomer Reinvention, How to Create Your Dream Career Over 50. Now, you might have seen this face before. He's been on some national networks and he was pushing his book and looking great too. I thought that one appearance on CBS Morning was fantastic. We had
Thanks.
great outfit and great presence. I want to welcome you to the show. You're in California, isn't that right?
I am in Los Angeles. Yeah. Pasadena, actually.
Pasadena. Yeah, love it. Love it. I've been there before, and what's interesting, I did not realize how close Los Angeles and Pasadena are pretty much tied neck and neck together.
It's this big kind of LA basin megalopolis, and all of these cities have grown together over time. Well, yeah, Pasadena and Los Angeles kind of butt right up against each other, and a whole bunch of other little cities around Pasadena. But Pasadena is like the center of what is known as the San Gabriel Valley. So it's on the northeastern edge of Los Angeles.
Now, do they still host? I went to the theater where they had the Oscars. It was once held in Pasadena. Is it still held in Pasadena?
I'm not sure if it's ever been held in Pasadena. It's held in Hollywood at the, I'm not sure what they're calling it now. It used to be the Kodak Theater. It's now, I think, the TCL. And for many years, it was held, I think, originally in the Pantages Theater, which is on Hollywood Boulevard, one of the kind of premier old kind of movie palaces. And then it was downtown at the Music Center at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion for many years. So it moves around.
Okay. All right. Let's get right into it.
Yeah. Let's talk about careers.
We have 3 elements of career building framework, basically geared towards older workers, those who are 45 plus. You've been working with hundreds of them over the past few years, and that landscape very well. These recent times, what would you say, and this is a little bit out of the box, but what would you say the biggest difference in your coaching now as opposed to pre-pandemic?
Interesting question. I think that the pandemic was an accelerator on a lot of levels in many areas of business and life for most of us. And I think that trends that were maybe simmering or under the radar at the time really were pushed to the forefront.
Okay.
And I think that in career, this whole question of working from home, what's the value of the work that I do? How is that being recognized? How can I best deliver it? That question really has changed the game, not just for mid-career professionals, but really for everyone in the workforce. And I think that there has been a shifting, a power shift here around what it means to work from home. And on the one hand, you have traditional employers who are saying, no, we got to go back to the office. And employees are saying, why? I worked for 2 years from home, got my work done. Yeah, there's some trade-offs, but basically the idea of this binary, either you're in the office or you're working remotely, we're now trying to navigate and negotiate what hybrid
Yeah.
work is, because I think that really is, particularly for knowledge workers, that is the future. Is some set of principles around how much can you get done at home? When do you have to be
Mhm.
in the office? And
Right.
how do you provide that value? And the distinctions that I make about mid-career work versus earlier career work or entry level work is that mid-career professionals, so 40 plus, 45 plus, 50
Mhm.
plus, are bringing significant background, experience, insight, strategic ability to their work. And that changes the game for
Mhm.
everyone.
Yeah.
One of the things, I'll just say this and just open this up to your next question. One of the things
Okay.
that I think is important for people to recognize is that at this stage, the criteria that we use to grow our careers, develop our careers, express our value in the marketplace, it's a different deal, right? We are no
Right.
longer or should no longer think of ourselves as supplicants pleading employers to give us a job, jumping through hoops to get recognized, to get our resumes answered, to get those
Mhm.
job interviews, to get those offers. We have something more to offer. We have value. This is a negotiation, or should be a negotiation, between equals, between peers, to determine whether we are the right fit for them, but just as important, to determine whether they, the employer, the employers, are the right fit for us.
Mhm. So basically, in your estimation, your experience and coaching experience, particularly, you've you've had to modify your coaching to show and to help older workers that they're experiencing, along with the other attributes, including resilience and being dependable and all those kind of things. All those serve a fairly large value now, be that the large complaint is how reliable the workers are. And pretty much older workers can answer that. I've got a long history of having that. And
Yep.
it doesn't matter whether we're in the office or not. This is a large value piece that I offer right off the bat, but it's not as easily sellable that people would think that it is to an employer.
I think there's a shift is going on around that. I think that I think any mid-career professional in the jobs marketplace today is going to have experience with ageism. I don't know
Mm.
anyone, certainly in kind of the public sphere, or certainly in my practice and in the mid-career lab community, which I've started to function as a kind of a clearinghouse and a hub
Mhm.
for these conversations. I don't find anyone who says, ageism? I've never experienced ageism. I've never experienced anyone with bias against me for my age.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone's getting it one way or another.
Right.
And to the extent that someone recently shared a story where they applied for a job, they got a job interview, they knew the job was still open, but instantly in the Zoom interview with the recruiter or the hiring manager,
Right.
the person said, "Oh, the job is now no longer available."
Mm.
And it was obvious to this candidate that the interviewer took one look at them and their gray hair and thought, "Oh, no, I'm not gonna hire an older person."
Yeah. Yeah. There's been lies for years that companies would tell. It's funny how people will say they aren't lies. I said they are lies because sometimes it's both based lies. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's a passive aggressive kind of thing. We do know the deal, but let's get to your three elements of career
Okay.
building.
I just want to say that
Let's go ahead.
the point of this about ageism and the shifts that are going on is that in this hiring market, which is uh, where it's hard to hire, it's hard to find qualified. It's a tight market for employers.
Mhm.
There seems to be a loosening of this traditional ageist series of myths that people
Yeah.
use to keep people out. And I'm seeing cracks in this armor around resistance to hiring older people. I think it's going to happen. I think it has to happen. I think there's greater awareness of the value of older workers. All these
Mm.
traditional ideas of, oh, they're out of touch, they're too expensive, they're just going to retire, they don't have the motivation. All of this is BS. And
Yeah.
what we're really seeing through the press, the narratives, the work that you're doing, you know, our colleague Kerry and Richard Eisenberg, other people who
Mm.
are writing about this every day, uh, uh, Chris Farrell, that this is no longer the case, that there's a good case to be made, a better case than ever to be made for hiring older workers.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I totally agree. We're just waiting for the breakthrough. We're waiting for, I see different pockets where they're being hired, but there's nobody. I've asked a question on my LinkedIn and through my newsletter once upon a time. I said, how old are people getting hired? What did they do that was really specific? And I think that's what led me down to you and knowing your experiences.
Right.
We had to talk to the email and we discussed it on your show in part back then, or what are the things that are really working
Right. Right.
for older workers to
Yep.
get hired, to stand out, to make themselves be a desirable hire.
Right. I think and this gets into your question about this three elements
Mhm.
career builder framework that I've come up with over the course of doing this for the last 10, 12 years to figure out, okay, so is there a better system than the system that we were raised on, which is no longer working, which is
Right.
polish up your resume, send out your resume and a cover letter, and wait for them to call you for an interview?
Mhm.
And that used to work, but it's been 15, 20 years since that actually worked because hiring system is broken, recruiters and
Mhm.
hiring managers are overwhelmed, too many applications, things are changing too fast, job requirements are changing. People don't really know, I think, what they want. Uh, and
Mhm.
parenthetically, if you've ever been a hiring manager and you had a position to fill and HR said, okay, I need a job description to put up on the post, it's like the worst thing imaginable to have to write a job description to just, what does this person do? So I
Yeah.
think a lot of job descriptions are bogus and done in haste. So it's really hard for a candidate to figure out whether or not they're the right fit for the job based on the job description.
Yeah. Just
So
don't say too loud. Recruiters may hear you and take
it's
offense.
okay.
Well,
It's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I know.
I
It's okay,
have been
but I know
subject
there's
to the
some that
ire
kind of
to the ire of,
but
I think there are some tremendous, fantastic, capable, responsible recruiters who are advocates for candidates and who really genuinely want to find the fit. And I think there are recruiters who are just filling out order sheets. So I think there's a range, right? In any business, there
right.
are people who have integrity and there are people who don't. So it's not about recruiters generally, it's just about how people
The
do their
process.
jobs.
The process. Yes.
But in this climate, I've been trying to figure out what is a set of best practices that we can follow to up our game as candidates
Mhm.
and really represent ourselves in a way that will draw the attention, not just of hiring managers and recruiters, but of other peers and colleagues who want to help us. How do we set this up? And how do we create what is essentially a flywheel? The idea that you have a system, you work at the system repeatedly, day in, day out, to build this leverage. And over time, it gets easier and easier to keep this thing rolling, such that in the career context, this flywheel means that your presence is out there continuously generating interest, generating feeds and leads for you as a candidate, even when you are in your current job. And you may be very happy in that job. You may be unhappy in that job. If you are unhappy in that job, your flywheel, your career flywheel, will be generating opportunities for you. So that was the idea of the three elements methodology. How do we get this rolling? So the three elements are this. Number one, define and express your superpower. And for me, the superpower is that particular unique combination of skills, talents, experiences, insights, preferences, all of the things that make you as a candidate.
Mhm.
How do you define that? How do you express that? How do you communicate that to others who want to know, what do you offer? What do you deliver? Are you a candidate? Are you someone that I want to refer to other people, right? So that's the number one step, is to figure that out. And the second step is, now that you've got that superpower defined, then you're going to use your LinkedIn profile, which is the number one career tool we have. The resume, to me, is secondary to your LinkedIn profile. Your resume is great, but it's a leave behind. It's the document you use to put yourself into their system so they have you on file.
Right.
But they're going to look at your LinkedIn. The first thing they're going to do when they hear your name and someone says, hey, check this person out, it's not, okay, well, wait for them to send me the resume to check them out. No, you're going to go to LinkedIn. You're going to see what their profile says. So you want to make sure that profile is completely tricked out and persuasive and eloquent about all of the things that you do, what you deliver, not just what your responsibilities and roles are, but what you've actually accomplished. That gives you the leverage to start working on the second element, which is building a community. It's not enough to just have a network of, in the LinkedIn jargon, 500 plus connections, right? Everyone has 500 plus connections on LinkedIn. That's like
Right.
gold standard. What does that mean? My line is that a network will stand by and watch you fail, but a community will pitch in and help you succeed. And the distinction between the network and the community is that the community is that subset of people in your network who are aligned with your way of thinking,
Mhm.
have some kind of investment in your success, just as you, as part of the community, should have an investment in their success. So you're building this kind of inner circle of people who are all on the same wavelength with you and you with them. And that group of people is where you want to concentrate your career efforts so that you can get connected and referred to opportunities. So that second element is figuring out who's in that community and going through your existing network and building on that network with people who fall into that community characterization.
Okay.
And then the third element answers the question that everyone always has about networking, which is, okay, so I've got all these people in my network. I need a job. What do I do? Do I email them every 2 weeks to find out what's going on? If they've heard of anything? And the answer to that is, of course, no. It's annoying. People see that coming. They don't want to just be always hearing from you about, hey, what have you heard? What have you heard? Anything for me? That's the wrong way to go.
Mhm.
What you want to be able to do is develop a level of communication that's going to essentially be inbound marketing, where you're drawing attention to yourself through what you're putting out into the world. So the key to that, the third element, is professional branding through thought leadership. And thought leadership is standing up for what you stand for. It's using online and offline in-person venues to express your views about what's important in your industry and in your business, about the roles that you perform, the threats to the economy as you see it through the business, whatever those issues might be that are near and dear to you, that really key off of the work that you do. And you elevate the conversation. So when you're out there commenting on someone's post on LinkedIn, or like you and I are doing here, we're on a podcast, right? Maybe
Hmm.
you have a professional organization that you associate with and you're involved in creating events for your industry. You're doing lunch and learns. You're giving back to your business and creating this aura of professionalism and expertise around a very specific set of topics where you want to communicate your professional status and value. And that takes the conversation out of the realm of, oh, I need a job, or I'm unhappy in my job, I need another job, to what are we going to do about this problem? Where's the future going? Why did this company make this decision? Was it the right decision or the wrong decision? Let's have a conversation about these issues. And through that, communicate with one another, develop respect for one another's point of view, raise our visibility in the community such that when it comes time to filling a position, you're out there already. And people who know you, who are in your community and in your larger network, say, hey, uh, maybe we should get Mark in on this. Maybe we should have him in for an interview. He's a really interesting guy. Did you read that piece did you read that comment that he made the other day on this person's post on LinkedIn? Or he was involved in this conference we did last year. He was really smart about, let's bring him in. And then once you're in contention, the difference between you getting the offer and someone else getting the offer may have to do with what's that more public persona that you're standing behind? How are you expressing yourself? Will you be a good spokesperson for the company? Are you a kind of a strong personality that's going to be an asset and
Hmm.
perceived as an asset? Are is your written communication through the work that you're sharing online, is that going to be an asset to your role? All sorts of benefits to engaging on a thought leadership level out in the world that directly impact the decision making process about whether you're going to get that offer. So again, those three elements are the flywheel, right? You keep working all those elements, you get your profile set up, you keep working that community and building that rapport with these people who are aligned with your way of thinking and the vision that you have for the business. And then on the professional branding and thought leadership level, you're constantly out there with new stuff so that people are going, whoa, this guy is like completely engaged and on top of it.
Yeah, I like all three. And in fact, I would even say that what's the hardest part is really spending the time in radio silence, so to speak. And what I mean is at first, just because you come on doesn't mean all eyes are on you to the person walking in the door. Not that kind of party. Yeah, you're gonna walk in the door unnoticed. And depending upon how fast you build your work and how long it takes you for you to engage, that's when you'll start to get noticed. And then getting noticed becomes a chain reaction more so then they're looking specifically for you because they've got to weed through all the other noise. So I just think of the aspect of your superpower where you talk about how you can build, how you'll need to make it clear, you know what it is and how you can use it and how you'll add value. That's one of the hardest things for most people to do, really, when they come on LinkedIn or really any platform or really an interview, really, is making that very clear that this is how I excel. This is what I, this is what I'm known for.
Absolutely.
And
Totally
that
agree.
that's where that's the hardest part for most people is realizing that takes some time for people to get that part.
Yeah. I think people are very hesitant to jump in because they are afraid of making a mistake. They're afraid of looking silly.
Mhm.
And I, my answer to that is you got to start somewhere. Start slow, start small, start safe, go with something that you feel is resonant and personal to you. Don't take on a big issue that's going to be hard for you to sustain.
Mhm.
Also, and also, don't do this on your own. Ask around. Talk to people about this and say, look, I'm trying to get a little bit more visible. I want to talk about this topic. What do you think? And the other thing is to start doing research before you even start to post. So I recommend this to everyone. Don't just blindly jump in there and start posting about whatever. Put yourself on some news feeds. Subscribe to newsletters in your area, to professional journals. Start getting a backlog of information that you can start to rely on. And you may start seeing trends and start commenting on other people's research or studies that are coming out or developments in leading companies or by leading executives and owners in your field. There are ways of easing your way into it where it feels authentic. And I just want to, can I share a story about this? I
Sure.
think it's a
Yes,
lot.
please. Absolutely.
So I profile a bunch of people in my book who changed their lives around. And
Mhm.
one guy, this guy, John Pugliano, who had been a industrial products salesman, had an interest in finance for a long time and was very good at doing trades on his own family's account. And when he got fired, and this was during the 2008, 2009 recession from his job, rather than go out and try to get another job in the sales field, he decided it was time. He was in his, I think, in his early 50s at that time. He decided that he was going to throw caution to the wind and become a financial advisor and got his certification and opened up his shingle and started
Mhm.
to try to attract clients to his methodology. And he was a big believer in the kind of the millionaire next door philosophy of kind of being a very kind of outwardly frugal but smart investor and saver. And so he read something in the paper on a Sunday in the financial pages that he really disagreed with. And there was some statement by some financial journalist. And he was looking around and looking online to find someone who contradicted that statement, which he thought was just completely bogus. Couldn't find anything. So he had a buddy who had a audio recording studio, and he called the guy up. He said, "Look, uh, can I record a podcast episode on this? I'm really fired up about this, and I just want to get this out online."
Mhm.
So the guy said, "Sure." So he came over and he had this prepared rant that he did, and he published it. And people heard it, and he had a good response to it. So he did it again. He did it again. Anyway, within about a year, he was within the top 10 financial podcasts on Apple. And it became this really important thought leadership anchor for him because when he was looking to sign clients, and they would say, "Why should I sign with you?" And he said, "Look," he would say, "listen to my podcast. Listen to old episodes of the podcast where I talk about the economy. If you and then compare them with where we are today. If you feel that my predictions and my advice from 6 months ago or 9 months ago was accurate or in line with your thinking, that gives you a pretty good indication about whether you want to work with me and have and entrust your savings to me." So that
Right.
became a very kind of a sharp and insightful way about using his thought leadership to support his business.
Yeah, and I think that well, you don't always have to. People worry about people disagreeing with them, and really, the best boxers aren't afraid to get punched in the face to punch somebody in the face back.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
so I think that's what, and that's what you and I have done throughout the years as well. We say something a little bit different. It may be contrarian to some degree, but that's the way we feel. We'll to stand on it, and but we're not afraid to get punched in the face the first few times. That doesn't
That's
mean I
right.
want to sit up there and get punched in the face all the time. But
Right.
having
Well,
said that, though,
yeah,
but that's part of it, which leads to your next point about building community is that when you have that community aspect, you get a lot of intel and you're able to use that in a way to make yourself attractive to someone who's looking on that might want to say, "Hey, can I work with you? Can I obtain your services?" Or recruiters say, "Well, what you said was a little different, but we like to explore that." So I think by that you build community, but you also get the benefit of the aspect that building community really travels in this day and age. Not so much
absolutely.
that you're a solo act, but you're able to build thoughts around you to inform you and to also help amplify others as they're doing the same thing as well.
Yeah. Get into a conversation. That's all it's about. You just want to
Yeah,
get into a reasonable conversation, exchange viewpoints, get into some healthy disagreements,
yeah,
and maybe your point of view changes and evolves from that dialogue. Maybe you're helping to influence other people, but it's all good.
yeah. And I remember one time somebody had wrote something that was I thought was off base. And so myself and another person went and questioned this person. That person went and took the post down and then rewrote it so that nobody will comment. And I'm going like, you missed the whole point.
All
You
right.
missed the whole point of doing what you do here on LinkedIn or really any platform, but especially on LinkedIn where it's a professional network where there are going to be contrary points of views. And probably there's always going to be somebody different. And not to get ratified just because somebody questioned what you said. You
Right.
just can't learn not to take those things personally. But really good posts and good information only travels if there's conversations surrounding it. So I think in your third point as well is talking about branding, that also that piece has to go to branding as well. And that when you're known for that, whether it's different than everybody else or not, people will start to respect if you're consistent, especially, and people will respect where you're coming from. And that that brings about other opportunities. You might even have some other stories or some other instances where, like your first has actually happened, where they get somebody else saw what they wrote and saw the reputation that they had. Well, branding basically is reputation, right? And then you get seen and you also get heard, but you also build opportunities along the way. It may not be quick opportunities. There's some opportunities I've had business wise that took 3, 5 years to develop.
That's right. And I think we're in this kind of quick fix, quick turnaround culture,
Yeah.
but these things do take time. And I think that one of the things that is a bit of an accelerant to counter all of the statistics, the real statistics about how it takes longer to get a job when you're older, all of these factors. I think that part of the reason for that is that when you're older, people expect more of you.
Mhm.
And you can't just walk into a job opportunity and expect them to make the same kinds of decisions about you that they did when you got your last job. So I've often said to people, if you lose a job and you've been in that job for 10 years, don't turn around and apply to the same job that you just walked out of. Because, like it or not, they're probably going to hire someone or want to hire someone who's like you when they hired you. So younger and cheaper and less experienced. Don't be applying to jobs where you've got 20 years experience and the job requires 7. And
Mhm.
if that job, with a caveat, because this gets into the quote unquote overqualified question
Mhm.
that I get a lot. Yeah, you may be overqualified for many of the jobs that you apply for. And there's going to be some possibly justifiable suspicion that you're in this job because you need the job, not because you want to do the job, or worse, that you're in the job as a stepping stone to get something else in the company that you really want, but you don't really want that job. So it's incumbent upon you, if you really do want that job, to share why it is that you want that job. Because most people who are younger, who are still climbing that success ladder, don't really understand that when you get to a certain point, you've done a lot, you may not want to do those higher level jobs anymore. You may actually reflect that I've climbed the ladder, I've had the responsibility, I don't want that anymore. I actually want to go back to doing something out of everything that I've done that I really enjoyed. And I now know more than I've ever known in my life that this is really what I want to do. And here are the reasons ABC. If you can communicate that to your prospective employer, they may they may have this epiphany about, oh my God, so this person really wants to do the job. How can I say no? They know the job, they're mature, they're stable, they can mentor other people on the team,
Right?
right? They're not a threat to me as the manager or to the manager of that position or that department. Oh my God, they're like the perfect answer to my prayer. A lot of that falls on the candidate to properly contextualize the reason that they want that particular job.
Yeah, and it doesn't come through mass supply. You go get to the ground to where you want to cover through a lot of conversations. And all those conversations aren't necessarily going to be an interview setting. They're going to
Right.
be with people who are in your community, your
Yep.
peers, your ex-colleagues,
Yep.
or going down the line. But for a lot of us who are older, we fit that mode. We aren't afraid to have this conversation as opposed to, and that's probably one of the, I think, great advantages of being older. We know how to have, we know how to mine for information through people, as opposed to younger generations. They try to use all the other things that everybody else is using, like the internet. It's like, when, I don't know if you remember Buck Rogers,
Of
how
course.
Buck Rogers, everybody else was using technology. He says, I'm going to turn off the radar. And he was able to get all these, shoot all these ships down because he went through analog and not through digital. And so, same way, older workers know how to use the analog really well, and they know how to use it in a way. So it's very organic to talk to people. And I think it's easier for people to remember other people when they've met them or they've had that one-to-one conversation, and you know how to navigate those conversations, get to where you want. So it's not going to be through the traditional interview that you'll end up in that position, because really interviews is just focused on that one job. As opposed to you had a conversation, you can mine for the goal to see where that actually will lie for you. All that being said, John, did you want to wrap up your three elements with anything else?
No, I mean, I think that's it. I think you really want to be proactive at this
Yeah.
stage in your life. I'll tell you something that got me into trouble over the past few months on LinkedIn. I did a post about how the LinkedIn green circle open to work message
Yes.
is a passive signal, and how everyone on LinkedIn is open to work. So rather than expecting people are going to see that signal and just offer you a job because you're available, you need to do more, right? You need to stand up again for what you stand for. You need to have a really clear representation of your value and your deliverables on your profile. You just can't rely on the old ways of doing it and expect that the employment universe, the hiring universe is your friend. There are a lot of, again, positive recruiters out there, but then there are a lot of unscrupulous people as well. And you just want to be as proactive as possible about putting your best foot forward, really explaining what it is that you do, and reaching out to your community, really getting into dialogue. Don't create the impression that you're sitting home waiting for the phone to ring or an email to hit your inbox.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I wrote on that post. I
You
had
did.
to get you with it, but I understand what you're saying. I think, but yeah, people shouldn't depend on one way to get a job. They shouldn't just do just the open to work and just the application. You've got to do a variety of things and keep tapping on. Even if there was a 5% chance of you getting your job because of this, of one methodology, still do it because
Sure.
it's a collective effort. It's not just going to be a one magic pill that's going to solve all your problems and get noticed. Because if you notice, how people will say, I got a job this way, and it doesn't work for the majority of everybody else who might want to try it, except for maybe one or two others. That's not to say it worked, but not everything worked for everybody. But you got to
Right.
also listen to what's being said and the information you get from around you from other people who might even have more insight than you. So, John, I thank you so much for coming on. And how should people contact you if they want to know more about you and what you do?
The easiest thing to do is to look me up on LinkedIn. I'm, I think, the only John Tarnoff on LinkedIn, and you
Mhm.
can find my profile there. You can also find my website, johntarnoff.com. And if you're interested in getting into this process and starting off on your career transition, whether you have a job or you need a job, I encourage you to take a moment to be reflective about it and start putting down some baselines around what you love to do, what you do well,
Mhm.
what the world needs or what your world needs professionally, and what you can get paid for. These four so-called ikigai questions. And there's a little worksheet on my website. If you go to johntarnoff.com/four questions, the number four questions, no space, you'll get that worksheet.
Thank you very much, John. By the way, Carlo Campos had chimed in earlier in the conversation. I don't know if you saw the network
Yes.
versus community. I like that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Totally,
Thanks.
that is the way to get, because again, when you talk about LinkedIn, the whole idea is to get visibility. The more people you let know about your work or your need for work or any
Right.
type of need for work, the better chances that you may get the right connection that'll lead you the right way. If nobody knows, then of course you diminish those chances. So definitely community is the way to go. And it's a little bit easier to think about networking because I think people get intimidated by that. In the meantime, I want to thank the rest of you for joining me on this podcast and this video. If you want to know more about me, you can go to thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Again, I'm Mark Anthony Dyson. We go with John Tarnoff today, talking about the way boomers can get into the workforce. And it was at three ways. And I definitely want you to go back and catch the end of this and listen to go and expect us in your podcast directory probably in the next week or two. Also, you can catch the lives again right here on LinkedIn or Twitter or on YouTube on my YouTube channel, which is the Mark Anthony Dyson. Meantime, peace in the valley world. Thank you very much for joining me and have a great day.